All right, folks, this week on my Succession Breakdown series, we're going to go over Season 2, Episodes 5 and 6. I think Episode 5, aside from the finale, is probably the best episode of the season. That's my opinion. I'm sure people will differ, but I'll tell you why I think it's really great. And then I'm going to loop in Episode 6, Argestes, I believe is how you pronounce the name of it, because that's sort of the closing of this little chapter within this season. In episode 5, Logan has worked with Rhea Jarrell, who is the CEO of a group called Pierce Media Group. And I believe that's the name of the company. Pierce Media Group is basically sort of like the liberal Democrat-leaning competitor for Waystar Royco from a news perspective. So they want to acquire a company in a takeover to help stave off the people who are trying to take over their company. So it's sort of like become too big to be swallowed by these other guys. And the only logical company to go after is Pierce Media Group. Now, they're polar opposites. It doesn't make sense theoretically for them to go after them, but they think it's worthwhile. And Rhea helps to facilitate the deal, or at least tells Logan what ways to go about facilitating it. So they're able to go to the Pierce's home, they being all of the Roy family and extended family almost, like everyone's there pretty much. The family dynamics are pretty hilarious. There's not an insane amount of symbolism in this episode like I usually go over, but you don't really need it here because the character dynamics, the introductions, there's so much going on. You almost like don't have room to do anything too artistic here. So probably the best scene in this episode is the extended dinner scene. So they're all around this really large dinner table. They're up in Massachusetts. The Roy family, the more sort of like hard scrabble, not that they're not wealthy, but hard scrabble upbringing of Logan compared to Nan Pierce, who has lived in this bastion of liberalism and the Democrat Party forever. And they're polar opposites, but they clearly respect each other and what their businesses are and what their families have built. So there's a respect there, but it's also a great contrast of the Roys going in, like Connor Roy is talking to one of the relatives of the Pierce family. And Connor's talking to him about his politics. He's running for president, quote unquote. And he asks this gentleman what he does. And the guy says, oh, well, I do some work with the Brookings Institute. And if you don't know, the Brookings Institute is a left-leaning, pretty left-wing group that would be a position of prominence if you're a Democrat. But Connor compliments him on that and says, oh, they do some great work. And the guy says, well, I didn't think you'd say that because it would be like, if you worked for the DNC and some Republicans like, oh, you guys are doing great. It clearly shows you don't know which side you're really on. And Connor's just a doofus, but he's a good foil for some comic relief in serious scenes with the family. So that's what he's there for, in my opinion, and just to kind of make you laugh and show you how dopey some people with too much money can be, because he certainly falls into that. At this dinner, Nan Pierce suggests that she's open to being acquired, but she wants to know what the plan is for Logan, who is going to be the heir apparent. And she would like it to be Shiv. That becomes very clear. But Logan basically says, well, we're going to decide that at a later date. I wouldn't want to announce just yet. And, we'd have to figure that out. And Shiv is sitting there just boiling. And she's so pissed off. And ultimately, it's like if the rocks don't cry out, I will scenario. And she ultimately says, Dad, why don't you just tell him it's me? You said it's me. And her siblings are like, who is this? It's almost like it's not supposed to be a Last Supper thing, but this sort of like everyone looking at each other like, is it me? Is it you? It's just really well done that way. And so that ends very uncomfortably. Kendall Roy meets Naomi Pierce, who is also an addict. They're standing together, and Kendall turns to her and says, so when are you going to ask me? And I assume she was supposed to ask what he was addicted to, but he's saying, do you want to go do drugs together? So they go get high together, and it actually seems like it's going well between them. They seem to hit it off. They probably can relate on a level that either of them would not be able to relate to basically anyone else in the world, because who else has had their experience? And they're like hanging out in a helicopter after they get high, and he starts to run it. And I think symbolically that's like she's helping getting his wheels turning and getting his, getting him working mentally in a weird way, even though they're doing drugs together. And then also it could be symbolic of like rising up with her. That could help him rise up in the world if he had a stable partner. And I guess that's part of it as well. But he ends up not flying away, thank God, because that would have probably been a death scene or something at that point. But very well done episode. When they're leaving, Logan basically apologizes for his family. And even though there's some awkward moments, Nan Pierce seems to say, don't worry about it. It was great seeing you. And let's continue the discussion. So then the next episode, Argestes. I originally was thinking the name was Gristades, like the supermarket chain in New York City, but I looked up what the word means, and it's basically a reference to a wind, and it's a wind that's known to blow clouds from off mountains or something. I don't know where it derived from, but it's a Greek word, and you'll see in the episode that's basically the message of what it's sort of thematically setting what happens in the episode, where at the end Nan Pierce realizes this deal's not going to work, and it never was. And so the clouds, this fog of, ooh, maybe we could get acquired, lifts. And she says, yeah, I don't think so. So in this episode, one of the they're up in the Adirondacks. Argestes is supposed to be the place they're at. It's filmed at the Whiteface Lodge in Lake Placid. I've actually been there before. It's a really cool spot. It's not really a place where you would hold a symposium. This is almost like a World Economic Forum, like they hold in Davos among the global economic elite and business elite. So it's not really that, but it's still it's a really, really nice building. I've seen well-known politicians there, or at least the time I was there, I saw at least one. So it's a fitting place. It looks good and seems plausible as a location you'd go to. It almost looks like a nice spot in Colorado. So anyway, they're there, and news breaks that there's some bad information, sort of a Me Too scenario in their cruise division. And this is the information that Tom and Greg have been working to hide in season 1. And Tom obviously told Shiv some of this, but Greg kept some info. So they don't really say how the info got out, and it's sort of vague. So it could easily be just the info Shiv has. Maybe she was so bitter about Logan embarrassing her and sort of going back on his word that she decided to leak this and strengthen her position. But it could also be the Pierces. You never know. There's so much going on. And the Roys have so many enemies or competitors. It's like, it could be any of a bunch of people. So that shows you it's good to have friends rather than a lot of enemies. And anyway, so they're at the symposium, and the Roy brothers are supposed to be speaking, or at least one of them is intended to be speaking. And Rhea Jarrell says, well, Nan thinks Shiv should be on there. And obviously, optically, she should, because she may not have a title at the company, but she's a woman in the family. And they're talking about Me Too related issues. So the idea of Roman going out and speaking well is really unlikely, and Kendall's just not the right fit, even though he's smart enough. So Shiv decides to go out with the brothers. That's what they agree on. And there's sort of banter and some jousting back and forth, but it seems to go over well enough in that Shiv kind of gets her points across. It looks good. Nan seems to be happy. Again, Nan wants Shiv to take over as CEO, or at least be named heir apparent. So it seems like it's the right goal for that. And then the clouds lift not long after that, where they go to sort of a banquet after this symposium, after all the speeches, where Tom gives kind of a dopey speech, which is funny, but not really important to the story. And they're at this banquet, and there's a comedian there, some famous comedian, and he starts ribbing on Logan Roy. And he's talking about the cruise ship stuff that broke that day and just what his perception is in general. And it seems it's at that moment that Nan's clouds are lifted, and she sees this for what it was, which is it was not something that would ever be consummated. This would be like Fox buying CNN. It's like, why would you buy someone you're competing with if you were going to let them remain a competitor? It just doesn't make much sense. So Clearly, she understands at this point, like, this ain't gonna work. So she decides to hit the road, and before she does, she tells Rhea she knows that she was operating behind her back, talking with Logan. So that's a really bad look for Rhea. She basically says, "You're out, resign, you're done." And so now one of Logan's biggest competitors is without a CEO. That's going to lead to more activity between her and Logan, and her coming on to Waystar Royco, and we'll talk about where that leads to. But very well done episodes. The next few episodes I'm not a huge fan of until the finale, which is just fantastic, but I'll still go into them. I'll break them down 2 or 3. We'll be at the finale soon enough. If you are watching on Instagram, please follow. If you are watching on YouTube, please subscribe, please like. If you are watching on my website, please subscribe to the email list. It's really just so you can get notified of new videos, not so I can harangue you, harass you, or bug you with emails constantly or asking you to buy stuff. So thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.